Today's show sponsor is Sienna Dawn Media Integrated Marketing Agency. Sienna Dawn Media is more than just a marketing agency. They're your partners in progress. Their mission is simple: to alleviate marketing bandwidth, allowing creative business owners to focus on what they set out to do: create. Sienna Dawn Media empowers creatives to thrive without the burden of managing their own social media and marketing campaigns. So if you're ready to set sail toward new horizons, let Sienna Dawn Media chart the course and steer your business toward success. Visit siennadawnmedia.com.
Blah, 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 blah.
Welcome to the Our Forever Smiles podcast, a podcast created to support mothers of children who were born with clefts and those who love them. I'm your host, Laura Arroyo, and I'm also a mother of a daughter who was born with a surprise cleft palate. I know the challenges you face every day. Whether you have just learned the difficult news of your baby's cleft lip or palate, you're in the midst of pre-op or post-op, or you're an OG cleft mom, this podcast is for you. In a weekly conversation, we will talk about everything from feeding and speech therapy to surgery and school. We'll share tips from guest experts and advocates, and even share a little joy in the process. You can listen to Our Forever Smiles wherever you listen to podcasts. Don't forget to subscribe and stay tuned. Hello, and welcome back to the Our Forever Smiles Cleft Mom Diaries on Support podcast. I am Laura Arroyo. Before we jump into this episode, I would like to invite you to join this community to hear conversations with other cleft moms and advocates that will help you feel supported along your journey. All I want you to do is click on the follow or subscribe button. I love your support. It's incredible to see us all come together, and we're just getting started here. So thank you so much for subscribing. As a note, we are not medical doctors, and we do not intend for you to use the information that we share here as medical advice. We're parents and advocates who love our children, and we are sharing our own personal experiences. I'm so excited to have a guest here today to talk a little bit about her journey. And also, one of the things, I send out a pre-interview questionnaires just so that I can get an idea of what the experience is like, because everyone's experience is so different. And so I'm really excited to speak with Sarah today because she commented on the questionnaire that she did have some grief, some post-op smile grief, and her baby boy, Hallis, will have had his lip surgery June 25th. So Sarah is a cleft mama from Franklin, Tennessee. Welcome, Sarah.
Hi, thank you so much. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you for joining us. And so did he have his surgery on June 25th?
He did. Yes, he did. And it was a long day. Like you said, I'm from Franklin, Tennessee. So we had our surgery at Vanderbilt Children's in Nashville. And they have a great, wonderful, amazing craniofacial team. And I love all of them. But that day was just crazy. They had us get to the hospital at noon and his surgery was at 2:30. But he's also not the only kid who had a surgery that day. So his surgery got delayed for about an hour and a half to 2 hours. And he can't eat at all before his surgery. So it was even more delayed than that. And my little guy loves to eat. So he was just so frustrated and so upset. And I got frustrated and upset. So his actual surgery didn't start till about 4:30. And then it didn't. Yeah. And it didn't finish until about 7. And then I met up with him in the recovery room, and we didn't get our room until about 10. So we were in the recovery area for 3 hours. And then we finally got to his actual room, which was crazy and so hard. And our hearts were breaking for him, but he's doing great. He's healing so well from it. And now his palate surgery is scheduled for sometime in November. So we're really excited to have that surgery down and over with.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's so interesting. My immediate thought is usually they have the babies go in first. So there must have been a lot of patients that day because I remember like for Giselle, my daughter, she had her palate surgery, but she was the first patient that morning and she was 10 months. She
Really?
went in like they probably took her at like 6 a.m. or something. Like it was really early. And I figured it was
His
because of the eating, like because you
yeah,
couldn't feed them.
he couldn't eat. Yeah, so originally his surgery was scheduled for April the 30th, and it was going to be at 8 in the morning, but he had a cold and an ear infection, and so they delayed it until the 25th of June so he could be fully healed from his cold. And the only time they had available was at 2 in the afternoon. And so we were on the general plastic surgery floor with every kid who was having to have a surgery that day. So it was
Oh,
crazy
well.
delay.
And I can
Yeah.
imagine you made that decision because
Hello, everyone. Sorry to interrupt, but I need a little bit of help. If you're listening to this on the Apple Podcast app or YouTube, you may see a follow plus sign or subscribe button. If you are able to, it would mean the world to me if you could follow or subscribe. That's the best way to support this show. If you subscribe, I'm able to show it to potential guests or different brands. It helps to grow the show and reach more communities to continue building awareness about the cleft lip and palate journey on a global scale. Thank you so, so much. Back to the conversation.
like I actually recently had a conversation with someone about this, but it's like you Giselle had her surgery at 10 months and so I waited up. It's a big date that you wait for. You wait for this moment to
Yes.
come. And then
Yes.
if you get like a cancellation, oh my goodness, that's heartbreaking. I couldn't have imagined if they would have canceled her surgery date. And of course, in your case, there's several reasons why they would cancel. They're overbooked or whatever, surgeon's not available, things change, schedules shift. But in your case, he wasn't feeling well, of course. So you want to
Yeah.
take all precautions to make sure that he's going
Right.
to be healthy enough to go through a surgery. But I can imagine just having that news of, oh, this is canceled. Let's take first available. And
Yeah, that was really hard. My husband and I were 100% emotionally, mentally, physically prepared. And then they gave us the news 3 days before his surgery. And we had our like day and a half to grieve that, so to speak. And it took us about 2 or 3 days to fully get back to the mentality of he isn't getting his surgery, but we're prepared for his surgery. And it was just 2, 3 days of negative feelings. And finally, we just looked at each other and were like, this is for the best for our son. And we have to have the most positive outlook on it that we can for our son. But yeah, it was extremely difficult for both of us. We did have to grieve that cancellation, rescheduling, so to speak.
yeah, I imagine in the moment too, you're like, I wish we would have picked an earlier time or waited because trust me, I've been there. It is so miserable. Like during the day, like you said it best, like your heart just breaks for them and just watching them be hungry. You know what the problem is. Yeah, they're just grumpy
Yes.
and
And I can't do
cranky.
anything about it.
You can't do anything about it. And then not only that, in an hour or two, you're going to have to hand them over to the surgeon. So you're not emotionally like all there. And so
No.
that is like really hard, but it is nice to hear that he is healing well and that he's healing beautifully. Did you get a new date for a palate repair?
Right now, it's November the 12th.
Oh, gotcha.
So
Okay.
but we haven't met with our surgeons yet. We're meeting with them. When are we meeting with them? The end of September. We'll have like a pre-op appointment, and then we're meeting with speech therapy. They're going to start scheduling us for speech therapy, feeding and nutrition. And we've been going to feeding and nutrition for a while. So it's like a whole new, some team members are new, some are not. So we're meeting new people, but also getting together with old people to talk about the process of his palate surgery and what we're going to have to do in order to prepare for that.
Yeah. Did you, just in going back to the beginning, how did you find out about his cleft?
I found out at my 20-week anatomy scan. My OB told me right after the scan. She said normally we don't talk to the parents until about 2-3 weeks after the scan, so we can make sure that everything is like looking good and we can get clear pictures and tell you what you need. But the sonographer just saw it pretty much immediately, and my OB told me right as soon as my scan was finished.
Oh, wow. Did the sonographer mention it to you at all, or?
No, she only told my OB, and then my OB relayed the message to me.
Oh, wow. Did they pull you into an office, or did you sense
Yeah,
something was wrong during that time?
a little, because the sonographer didn't really look at me or talk to me very much. At the beginning, she was more chatty, but then towards the end, she was very quiet and didn't really look at me or my husband very much. So I didn't think it was as serious as a cleft, but I thought it was I didn't even know what I thought it was, but I just didn't think that's what it was. But then my OB pulled me back into an exam room, and I was waiting to hear the results and just how he was doing and his growth and all of that. And then my OB was very nervous to talk to me, and she's normally not a very nervous person. And so I was like, something's the matter. And I'm like, oh, what am I going to do? Is this serious? Am I going to be able to have my baby? I had every different scenario running through my head. But then she finally said possible cleft lip and palate. And I was in shock, but I also have never really met anybody with a cleft lip or palate. Like, I knew that they existed, but I didn't really understand it. So I don't think I didn't break down or cry or get upset in her office. It hit me as I was walking to my car after my scan.
Mm. Oh, wow. And were you just in shock? Was it? I know I was just like, it's like looking back, I was so stupid. I feel like I was like it didn't register. Like, it just didn't register or something. I don't know.
Yeah, that's how I felt too. I was like, you say the word cleft, and I'm like,
Yeah.
okay. And I looked at her and I was like, that's okay. And she's like, do you know what that means? I think I was just like looking at her. I don't even know how she thought I was looking at her, but she like talked to me like I was not stupid, but she was like, are you okay? What are you doing? What's going on? And then she kept saying the word cleft lip, cleft palate. And so then it finally hit me like, oh, now I understand what's happening. This is my baby, and he is going to have a cleft lip and palate, and I know what that means, and I know what that looks like. So yeah, it took me a minute. It took me a good probably 15 minutes was what she was telling me.
Yeah. And you mentioned that your husband was there. Did he have the same sort of reaction, or was he like?
To be honest, I wasn't even paying attention to my husband. Throughout my scan, they tell you not to drink water. And so throughout my scan, I was just trying to think, please don't pee on the thing. Please don't pee on the thing. And then I got into the exam room, and I was sitting on the exam chair, and he was behind me. So I didn't really even turn and look at him until we got up and left the appointment. And I didn't really. So to answer your question, no, I don't really know. But I think as we were walking to the car, we both were just stone silent. And then we got to the car, and we both started crying and just really understanding our child is going to be born different. Our child is going to have medical needs. We're going to have a complex baby. We never thought we would have a complex baby. So that's, like I said, like pretty much after we found, like 15 minutes after we found out, it finally hit both of us that this was happening.
Are you both first-time parents?
Yes.
Yeah. It's tough too. I was also a first-time mom as well, and I think that's also like the thing that kind of brought on the shock, I think, or that's like the reason that it didn't register for me, because everything was new. I didn't really know what to expect for anything. So any information was just okay. I didn't know how to quite process everything. And so what do you do like when you go home? Did they give you any information, any additional like support?
They didn't. They told us that they were referring us to Vanderbilt because the hospital that my OB is through and where I had Hollis is affiliated with Vanderbilt. So they had us, my doctor said, we're calling them and we're going to have a referral, but that was pretty much it. Pretty much right afterwards, my parents live about 15 minutes away. So I went to my mom, and my dad was at work, but I went to my mom and I just broke down and I was like, Mom, like my baby's going to be abnormal. And both my husband and I were just devastated. And we didn't see any like hope. Like we knew that there were kids out there with cleft lip and palate, and adults, I should say, people, not just kids. But you never think that it's going to happen to you until it happens to you. And so it was just a whole slew of crazy and sadness and grief. But my mom, one thing that my mom said was, this baby was made for a purpose. And you don't know the purpose. He may never know the purpose, but there's a reason that your baby is going to be this way. And there is a reason that you are his parents. And so that kind of stuck with me. And I'm like, okay, my purpose is my child. He is born this way for a reason. And it is my job to help him navigate that and make sure that he is still a bright, sunny, wonderful kid. And so far, that's happening. He's a really bright, happy 8-month-old. So I can't complain too much.
Yeah. I feel like that's my second favorite age. Like between 8 and 10 months. It was like,
Yeah.
they're like still like squishy and like a baby. But they're more enjoyable.
Yeah, they're discovering things. And they're like this afternoon, I was sitting watching television with him and he started clapping for the first time. And I like yelled at my husband, oh, he's clapping. And my husband was like, okay. And he's like, that's really cool, but okay, that's great. Good for him.
Yeah, I love that because they're like discovering so many things. And then also, hopefully, I don't know about Hollis, but hopefully he's like sleeping through the night now, or at least waking up less.
He actually started sleeping through the night at 2 months. So that's been very nice. Yeah, it's very nice.
Oh, wow. Okay, so how has he been with sleep since the lip repair? Because that's been like a really big thing that people go through, is like a regression. And
yes, he definitely went through one. He is in daycare, and at daycare, he would take a 3-hour nap and then an hour nap or a 2 and 2. So he would take a total of 4 hours of naps at daycare. Even now, like almost 2 months after surgery, we're lucky to get him to take an hour nap or like a 45-minute nap. But at night, for the first 2 weeks, at night, he didn't sleep through the night at all.
yeah,
He slept probably 2 hours at most. But as he stopped feeling pain, or he started feeling less pain in his scar area, then he started sleeping more at night. And now that he's feeling better, he's sleeping on his tummy. He used to sleep on his back, but now he won't go to sleep unless he's on his tummy. And there are some times throughout the night still where he burrows himself in and it hurts his scar a little bit. And so he'll cry, but he goes, as soon as I get up and give the little or whatever, he will definitely go back to sleep. So that part, the first 2 weeks of that was very hard because it was basically back to newborn where we were sleeping maybe an hour or two at most and then up for 2-3 hours and then an hour or two at most, up for 2-3 hours. So yes, that was good stuff.
Definitely not this again, especially. It's really hard. And then you're just also just stressed out trying to make sure that they're okay. I think it's like a little bit of I guess I'll speak for myself. I was just up really. I was like not even like sleeping that well because even while she was asleep, I would just be up like worrying. But it was definitely a hard time. Yeah.
Yes.
And so tell me about when Hollis was finally born. So during your pregnancy, did you doing this or did you eventually get on Google or you met with the team beforehand or?
Yes, I did. So I stewed for about 3 weeks. I definitely took advantage of being pregnant and being hormonal to let my emotions smack me in the face a little bit. But yes, I did meet with the team at Vanderbilt in the maternal fetal medicine, and they did another anatomy scan, which their scan was about an hour and 45 minutes. And so they were just trying to get all these clear pictures. And throughout the rest of my pregnancy, I was Googling. I didn't want to Google too much because I'm one of those worry warts that I'll probably imagine the very worst scenario that would never happen in a million years. And I'd be like, oh, that's going to happen to my kid.
Yeah.
What am I going to do? So I did Google some. And then one of the things the maternal fetal medicine recommended to me right away was joining a group on Facebook for cleft moms. And so I looked for a bunch, and then I joined the one that we're both a part of, which is really helpful and really, I do feel lonely here, like in my world, because I don't know anybody that's a cleft parent. But it's really nice to see that there are other parents going through the same thing as I am, whether they're face to face or on a computer screen or a phone screen. So that's one thing they recommended, and that's been a huge blessing to me, is finding that group. But yeah, throughout my pregnancy, I did Google a lot, but I would take breaks. I would Google for 2-3 days, and then I'd be like, okay, I'm not looking at this for 2-3 weeks. Then I would just get in that pattern until I finally had him. So I'm not have a lot of knowledge, but I wanted to be somewhat prepared for what my son would look like once he was fully in this world. So
Yeah, I think finding that sense of community is really important as well. I think that's the main reason why I started this podcast, was because I just felt more stories needed to be told. I feel like it felt, when I had my daughter, it felt like such a distant problem. We see these posters and a lot of unrepaired clefts and that type of thing. And then that's been the story and the general knowledge I feel like a lot of people have around cleft. And just to like echo what you were saying earlier, you don't think it can happen to you until it happens to you. And yeah, I think that finding that community is like so critical and so important. And so just in talking about your Hollis being born, what is like your labor and delivery story? I always ask, did your water break and you ran outside the movies, or
no, actually, I wish that had been the case. But as I got further along through my pregnancy, my blood pressure started going up. So my doctor, I did tests for 2-3 weeks to see if I had preeclampsia, and I never developed it. But my doctor said my blood pressure kept going up. So she wanted to do an induction. So at 37 weeks. So on December 17th, I went in on a Sunday evening, and it was very cold, and I did an induction, and I didn't actually get contractions until I think about 2:00 the next afternoon, my water manually. So they broke my water at about 1:00 on the 18th. And I was in labor for about 17 hours. And then at hour 16, when they were like, okay, we're going to get ready and push, and they did my exam, and Hollis had turned sideways. So in that, they said we could probably try to push him out, but his head was in the 99th percentile. His head was huge. So they said that he may get stuck if we push, or we can just do a C-section and get him out. And I was already on hour like 16 and a half of labor. And so I was like, please just cut him out. Just cut him out. I can't handle it anymore. I told him, I don't think I can physically push anyway. I think my body was just so tired at that point. And so at 6 a.m, I had a C-section, and it took about 5 minutes from start to finish. My husband was in the room with me, and of course, being in surgery, I didn't get to see him. I saw him from the side, from 5 feet away, when he came out, and he was on like the weighing table station, whatever you want to call it. But my husband immediately, he ran to the table. Then he turned to me, he's like, wait, are you okay? I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. You can go see our son. Like, go see our kid. That's fine. Immediately he got to the weighing station and he put his little hand out and Hollis grabbed his finger and then my husband started crying. He was like, this is amazing. This is my son. This is my whole world now. And then I was awake, but I was still very loopy. So I was like in La
Mhm.
Land, but it took me like a good 5 minutes to get alert and be like, oh my God, that's my child. And I started crying. And
No.
I like was kind of asking the nurses, I'm like, can you bring him over here? Can you bring him over here? I want to see him. I want to see him. And they were starting to get annoyed because I kept asking them so much. But yeah, it was a long 3 days. And then I was in the hospital for 2 more days. Yeah, I was in labor for about, like I said, about 17 hours. And then I had a C-section.
Yeah, that's good. I'm glad that you bugged them to see them, and who cares if they get irritated?
Yeah.
Go you,
I mean,
mama.
yeah, my body's being cut open right now. So you can put up with it. It's fine.
Yeah. So did he do any NICU time, or was he able to get his feeding down like right away?
Yeah, he was actually able to feed pretty well. We didn't have any NICU stay. I got some colostrum when I had him, and we were able to try that a little bit with breastfeeding, but they also knew at the hospital that I was going to have a cleft baby. So they were already supplying me with formula because they said that formula might be a little bit easier on him and a little bit better. So they put like a little nipple on the formula and they cut the nipple wider so he could drink it better. But he was feeding well when he came out. But I know a lot of moms with cleft babies have NICU stays, but we didn't have one, which was really nice.
Yeah, I think the one thing that usually some hospitals, they send them to the NICU. That's just like their protocol. But primarily NICU time is usually when our babies usually get NICU time when they can't get the feeding down. And I know that's one thing, if you can prepare ahead of time, get different bottles, or you're not really gonna know until they're here, but it's definitely good practice to just watch some maybe feeding videos or ask questions in the groups. Of course, listen to this podcast or other people who have experience with feeding. But that's the one thing that I feel like is common for people that go to the NICU, is that it's always related to feeding.
Yes.
And so now you obviously have fell in love with this beautiful smile. What did you prepare? How did you prepare yourself emotionally for surgery day? And also just practically, what did you pack? What did you do to prepare for lip surgery?
Yeah, emotionally, a lot of it was just me and my husband talking to each other and telling each other positive things already that we see about our son, and that those things are not going to change with his surgery. The only thing that is going to change is how he smiles. And in the grand scheme of life, that's not a big deal. It is a big deal to have the surgery, but we just put it in our head, this is just a small part of who he is. He is so much more than his cleft lip and his cleft palate. And this is just one step to get him to be the person that he's meant to be. And that he's going to have this characteristic his whole life, but it's not going to be his whole life. So we just talked to each other and had those mental, emotional check-ins with each other to make sure that we both knew that this isn't a forever thing. This is temporary. He's going to be in pain and it's going to be temporary, but it's going to lead us and him to a better life. And that was hard. It was a lot. And because we were already so in love with his smile. And like we said earlier, his surgery got delayed. So we had even more time with this smile that he had. So that was really tough. But we knew in the end, like, it's going to help him eat better. It's going to help him be better. It's going to help him speak better. So we have to do it. There's no getting around it. It's just getting through it. So those are the things we did emotionally. Physically, or what we brought to the hospital. Actually, one of my coworkers got us a suitcase, and it's a Harry Potter suitcase. And my husband and I are humongous Harry Potter fans. So we took that as Hollis's suitcase to the hospital.
Oh,
Yeah, it was really cool. We weren't expecting that, and it's a beautiful like leather suitcase. And so that's something we're going to keep with us forever for him. So that was really nice. But we brought his blankie, some clothes, diapers, obviously. We brought our own bottles, but we actually ended up not using them. We actually just used syringe to feed him after his surgery, but they told us just in case to bring bottles. So we did that. Let's see, clothes, blankie, diaper. We brought some toys, but he was so just out of it and in pain that he didn't want to play with them. And then obviously, of course, we brought our stuff like shower stuff, clothes. We tried to pack relatively light just because we didn't know how big or small the hospital room was going to be. And we didn't want to have to take 4, 5, 6 trips to and from our car. So we tried to keep it light, but tried to also bring things that brought all of us comfort. Like my husband brought his computer so he could have things to do during his surgery. I brought a book to read while during his surgery, after his surgery, while he's sleeping, if the doctors are with him, just to give myself a peace of mind and bring myself back to this is not the real world. This is like a very small area of the world. But for me, bringing a book back brought joy back to my life and gave me less stress and less anxiety. And it was a book that wasn't educational. It was just a book for fun.
How long was your stay?
So we got to the hospital on a Tuesday afternoon and we left on a Friday afternoon. So 3 or 4 full days.
Oh, wow. Do you feel like you needed those 3 days?
No, I think we could have gone home earlier. We had some issues. Our surgeon was going to come see us, but then he got booked for another surgery. So we had to stay an extra day because we couldn't leave until he gave his okay because originally we were just going to be staying overnight and we were going to leave Wednesday, but we ended up leaving Thursday afternoon, not Friday afternoon. But I think we could have been okay with overnight and not staying the extra day. But it was a blessing because we have family that work at Vanderbilt. So they got to come see him and we got to get out of ourselves for a little bit and experience the love that our family has for us and for him. And we could take a second and not focus on him and focus on my husband and I's well-being and mental clarity and stability. So it was, but I wish we had come home sooner. I think it would have helped more in Hollis's recovery if we came home a day sooner.
Yeah, it seemed long when you mentioned it. That's why I asked about it, because although I've heard people do outpatient for lip, but then I've also heard, which I think is too soon, but then I've also heard like a 1-night stay or a 2-night stay, that type of thing. Did you all do any NAM or taping before surgery at all?
Yes, we did. We did the NAM, and we loved it. I shouldn't say loved it. We had a love-hate relationship with it. I was actually supposed to, when I had my C-section, I was supposed to stay an extra day, but the NAM team only had an appointment on a Thursday. So we checked out of the hospital at 6:45 and our appointment was at 7:30 in the morning. So I pretty much went from having a baby to immediately being at Vanderbilt getting fitted for his NAM. So that was crazy. But yeah, we had a NAM and it helped so much. I am so grateful for that little device. Like it was a big pain with all of the tape that we had to do, but I don't think Hollis would have the quicker healing that he did. And I think he would have had a much bigger, more visible scar than he does. So I am eternally grateful for that device, even though at the time I hated that device. But I am so grateful for it.
Yeah, no, I can imagine that's the weekly visits. And then a lot of babies don't get used to it right away. So it is like a big challenge, the crying with it, the sores. I heard it is truly a labor of love, but I've never heard anything negative about it, like the results from it. Like everyone says it's like really like a miracle worker. And so it's worth the trouble at least. And so that's really good. I encourage families that if you can do it, to definitely get the NAM if you're able to. So after surgery, how long was the surgery? Was it 2
2.5
hours?
hours. 2.5
Gotcha.
hours. Yep.
And whenever you were able to finally see him, what was your initial reaction?
So my husband and I had very different reactions. My husband pretty much was like grabbing him from the nurse and was like, oh my gosh, I want to hold him. I want to see him. I want to look at him. And I was terrified to look at him because I had people prepare me and be like, your kid's not going to look like your kid. He's not going to look the same. He's going to look beautiful, but it's not going to be the same. And I looked at him and I saw him, and my husband was like, look at him. He's great. This looks so great. And I'm like, that's not my son. And he was like, what do you mean? And I'm like, that's not my son. I didn't feel, for a good 2 hours, I did not feel the emotional attachment to him because he looked so different. I'm like, this is somebody else's kid. They're saying this is my kid, but it's not. And I had to have a moment. I told my husband's name is Malcolm. And so I told him, I'm like, Malcolm, you spend your time with him right now. You bond. I have to grieve right now. I need to grieve this old smile, and I need to get to terms like this is what my kid looks like right now. And of course, after surgery, he's all swollen and puffed up. So that's another reason why he didn't look like my son to me. But it definitely slapped me in the face with how different he was looking already after his surgery and how much I didn't expect him to look that different right away. And I didn't expect to not see him as my son. That was very hard for me. But after about an hour and a half, I came back around and I took a walk around the recovery unit and I was like, okay, I want to hold him. And as soon as I held him and he opened his eyes, I was like, that's my son. That's my baby. And that was the hardest day of my entire life so far as a almost 32-year-old being. It was watching my son have this surgery and watching my son completely transform into a different person almost. But he was his same self. It was just mind-boggling that this little surgery could just completely alter the way my son looked from one day to the next.
Yeah. I think that so many people, I've spoken to so many moms, and a lot of them say the same thing. This is not my child. Like, where you're almost like nervous. Am I picking up do we have the wrong bed?
Like, is this my right kid? Like, I don't think this is my child. Are you sure? That's what I said to the nurse. I'm like, are you sure this is Hollis Norwood? And she's like, I'm sure. There's his name, Ben. That's him. I'm like, okay. And I didn't believe her.
Wow. Yeah. If this makes you feel better, and I know you've seen it in the groups as well, like so many people have that reaction. So many moms have that reaction where it's, I was not prepared. Nobody on my team told me that, hey, be prepared. Like for after surgery, they're not going to look the same. And you might have some emotional reaction to that, which I think is important to share.
Yeah. My surgeon actually told me that beforehand.
Oh, they did? Okay.
Yeah, our surgery team told us that, but they're like, you need to experience every single emotion that you have because they are all valid. They said you're going to have a lot of them, but make sure you experience, like they said, some people get angry, some people get sad, some people get depressed, and they're like, you have to experience those to get through it, but you also have to get yourself out of them and remember, like, your baby's the same baby. It's just they look a little different.
Yeah. Did you do anything? I know some parents tried to memorialize or do something special to remember that first smile. Is it like pictures, or what have you done to, I don't know, cherish that moment that you had before?
We didn't do anything like super special. We were going to actually get a family photo and do like a photography session, but we weren't able to book one in time. But we have pictures on our phone, and so far, because it's only been on the 25th, it'll be 2 months. on the 25th, I took my pictures on my phone and I just looked at them and of his previous smile. And I showed them to my husband and I'm like, look, this is our perfect baby. And he was already perfect. But now looking even 2 months from now or from surgery, he's even more perfect. And we are actually going to keep his name. And we're going to it's weird, but we're going to let him have it and keep it in his room when he gets older to show and be like, this is where you came from. This is what happened. This is why you are the way you are, but it's not who you are. It's just a blip. Yeah, we didn't really do anything too special. We celebrate it, but we don't do much.
Yeah. There's a woman on Instagram. She's also a Cleft mom. She's Cleft Warrior Woman on Instagram, and she does portraits for Cleft babies. You can commission her to do them. She's actually doing an exhibition. She's in London. She's painting 100 photos, I believe, of children that were born with a cleft. And so it's a fascinating thing that she's doing. She's a beautiful artist too. And so just really excited to see that. And I think that a lot of people that's like the way that I know people get like tattoos and stuff and that type of thing. I know I believe Alicia Pelche, she's a cleft affected individual. She's an adult. And I think she told me that her mom got a tattoo, which she thought was like, wild. She was like, my mom is so crazy, but she got like a little tattoo. But I think we're going through this thing as well. It's like a lot of the journey is us struggling through that and like having to get through that. You mentioned that like just recovery has been like one of the hardest parts of the journey, or just like grieving that post-op smile. Is there anything else in particular that you feel was just like really hard?
I think just coming home back to the real world was a little bit hard. Like I said earlier, my parents live close by. My husband's parents don't. And they wanted to come see him and love him and be with him. But we just told them we actually didn't have any outside. We had some family that worked at Vanderbilt that came by, but we didn't have any of our like close family that came by while he was at Vanderbilt for his surgery. We wanted it to be just the three of us as much as we could. And coming home to the hospital was our bubble. And coming home, we were out of that bubble. And for so long, we put ourselves in a bubble before his surgery so he wouldn't get sick and we would have to delay his surgery even further. So it was hard to be finished with that and everybody thinking you're home now so we can come see you and be with you and support you, and which is wonderful, and that we have a community of people that want to be with us and help us. But the hard part was saying no. For me, my husband is very okay with saying no. I am not somebody that says no very well. It was very hard for me because we were still supporting our son, but we weren't getting that support anymore from the hospital. So I felt like, yeah, home with a newborn for the first time. Like, what do I do? Like, how did you let me come home with a baby? I don't know what I'm doing. And I got overwhelmed all over again. But just being able to understand that this is my baby and this is the process that we are having to go through was very helpful and very enlightening. But yeah, I think for me, the hardest part was just coming home and being on our own again after his surgery.
What is something that you wish people knew about children that were born with a cleft lip or palate?
That they're not that different. The only thing that's different is their face. They are just as bright and bubbly and sometimes annoying and frustrating as your kid. That doesn't.
That's so true.
It's like I'm struggling right now with my little guy taking naps, and I'm like, I'm pretty sure most babies struggle with taking naps. And that's what people don't understand is that they see a kid that's had a cleft and they're like, oh, this kid is scarred for life and they're different. They're really not. They're really just the same. And I will admit, I had that view before I had my baby with a cleft. So I always had that kind of stereotypical, oh, they're scarred, like they're different, like they're what's going on with their life, but they're all the same. Kids are kids. And the only thing is he just has to go to the doctor more and he had to go and get surgery. That's pretty much it. He's pretty much a normal baby. He's annoying when he can't eat, but when he does well, like it is what it is. He's still a little kid. And that's what I think everybody should know is that they're no different than any other kid. They need love. They need playtime. They need parents and family that love them just like every other kid does.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. If you think he's annoying now, just wait until he turns into a toddler.
Yes, that's what I have heard as well. So I can't wait. I
It's
can't wait.
It's next level annoying. But no, yeah, you're absolutely right. There's such a joy. And it's just been, even for myself, it's been fascinating to watch her grow. And just like the expectation that I had for her in my head was like, I had this idea of just coddling her. And she's proven to be stronger than I am. She's proven to be much smarter and much resilient and just brighter than I ever imagined her to be. And I think to myself, like, why would I ever doubt that she would be any different from this experience? And just in closing, what do you think is the biggest lesson that you've learned in all of this?
That my baby is a strong baby, like you were just saying. He bounces back so quick and he loves being around other kids, and the kids at his daycare love him. And I have learned that he is stronger than I think I'll ever be already in the 8 months of his life. And something else I've also learned is that every day is truly different and every day is truly precious. Getting to see him now with his smile is such a joy and such a unique experience. And I am so grateful for him and for this journey that we are on every single day.
Yeah. And I agree with the sentiment earlier. I think that he's so blessed to have you as parents. And I think that everything is done with a purpose. And you're right. Like you were meant to be his parents. And so I think that's really special. And I wish you so much luck in your journey. And of course, thank you for being on the podcast. And we look forward to actually hearing about palate repair as well. So just make sure that
Thank you for
maybe
having me. I have enjoyed this so much.
Yeah, we'll come on. We'll have you on again for an update on palate repair. I'm sure people would love to continue to follow your journey.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome. And thank you all for listening to the Our Forever Smiles, Cleft Mom Diaries and Support podcast. Be sure to subscribe or submit a review of the podcast wherever you listen. I hope that you've enjoyed this audio experience. Maybe you cried a little, laughed a little, but more importantly, I hope that you feel a little piece of reassurance and even joy in your journey. Talk to you next week.